This presentation is going to review some of the things I found interesting and that might be useful while I was reviewing the web content for the Lawrence Public Library website. To start off with and sort of narrow the focus a bit, I divided the content into 5 categories, and these are 5 categories that David Lee King uses in his blog when he talks about library website content. One is traditional content, which is basically your catalog. Another is library as content, which would be your address and hours, information about your services, those kinds of things. And I did not examine those closely because together those 2 categories, they're both very static and they're almost completely automatically generated content. I did look a little bit at attendable content, which is classes, exhibits, posts about speakers, anything that a patron can attend. But I didn't look most closely into it because, again, a lot of attendable content is going to be fairly standard. What I looked most closely at was original content and collaborative content. And original content would be stuff created by the librarians. Collaborative would be stuff created by patrons. To examine all the information, I used a number of different sources for my statistics. One would be the back end of WordPress to look at comments and those kinds of things. I used a social metrics WordPress plugin to examine social network interactions with posts, and then I used Google Analytics to look at the number of page views, how long people stayed on a page, how people came to a page, and a number of other sort of quantitative figures. So big picture, I looked at statistics of the site from the dates June 1st, 2012 through June 1st, 2013. So of the past year, in a big picture way, you can kind of get an idea of how people are using the site. These are the most visited pages in order. So calendar is the most visited page last year. News and events is also up there, so you can see that attendable content is obviously a big thing. And also ebooks and more and books and more, so people are interested in your traditional content also. Here's an overview of the navigation use over the past year, and what all the percentages mean would be of the people who came to the home page last year on your website. 3.9% of them would then click on news and events, 4.1% would then click on books and more, and so on. And the use of the navigation is pretty even. There's not really a lot that jumps out as being sort of dominantly popular or being really unnecessary. I highlighted in red the links that were least used. The one at the top, the Community Kindle Project, was only part of the navigation for a fraction of the dates I was looking at, so it's not surprising that that's low. And then some of the other ones that were low are links that you don't really expect a lot of hits for. They're just necessary. So disability services, honor with books, those kinds of links. And aside from those, there, like I said, there really isn't anything that jumps out at you. You're getting a pretty decent amount of use out of most of the links in your navigation. So to dig in to some small picture stuff, I'm going to talk about content quote-unquote popularity. And of course, I use that term sort of tentatively. All of the statistics that I used are quantitative. They're not an ultimate measure of what exactly would make a post quote-unquote popular. But based on the statistics that I had available to me, on the left here is a list of the most popular attendable content. The banned books card, a post about that, a post about reading across Lawrence, the post about summer in the city, and the Tony Horowitz talk post. Those were your most popular attendable content posts. Again, I didn't really look much more closely into those because your attendable content is going to have, is going to have information about the event and what's going on, maybe a link to the performer's website, maybe an image, but it's not going to have as much variety as original and collaborative content will. So what I looked most closely at were original collaborative content. Here's your 4 most popular posts that were original or collaborative in nature. If you liked The Hunger Games, still hungry for more books like The Hunger Games. If you liked Winter's Bone, and find the YA novel that will make you laugh out loud. So to look at those posts, and here they are. 3 of them were posted to the teen zone. 1 of them was targeted towards adults. 2 of them were about the Hunger Games. 1 was about Winter's Bone. The 3rd one was a more general reader's advisory. They all happen to be infographics, so some of them have a blurb at the top, but the meat of the post is really visual in nature. So before I jump to the conclusion that everybody only wants infographics, I wanted to see if there was anything I could look at that might point to why those posts were popular. And there's a number of things that are probably contributing, of course. Content type could be one. It could be patrons prefer infographics. The subject matter, obviously the Hunger Games probably played a part in how popular some of those posts were. The audience demographic is also one. As I said before, I'm looking just at quantitative data, and a lot of the statistics I'm looking at are things that probably favor teen audiences more. Teens are, might be more likely to like things on Facebook, to spread the link around, to tweet something, and so they might be doing things that boost those statistics more than other patrons might. All of those first 3, though, are kind of hard to pinpoint. They're a little bit subjective. One thing that I did have access to data on, though, and that jumped out at me, was the visibility of those posts. For instance, if I looked at the most popular original content, if you liked The Hunger Games, how were people getting to that post? Where were they seeing that post? And a lot of the traffic was direct. But you also had over 15,000 people come to that post from Facebook. A similar amount from Google. You had over 5,000 people come to that post from Reddit, and a number of other sites pointed to that post. So it was visible in a whole lot of places. I also looked at the same statistics for the most popular attendable content. So a lot of traffic again was direct, but there was also, again, a lot of traffic from Facebook. You have people referred from Google, from the Huffington Post, from Media Bistro, from the LJ World. All of these places were directing people to look at your posts. And that's in contrast to your typical post traffic sources. The lion's share of your other posts have only 2 traffic sources. People either came directly to it or it popped up in a Google search. So there could definitely be an argument made that the sort of advertising of your posts is really contributing to the amount of audience that's going to be impacted. But that being said, I wanted to look at some of the posts that maybe weren't plastered all over the front page of the internet, but I wanted to look at some of the statistics for those and see what might be of interest there. I looked at some more text-heavy posts, so a lot of the reader's advisory, a lot of the book reviews are more an essay style, and I picked out staff picks. Anything that was a staff picks over the past year had 1,300 views, over 1,300 views, and the thing that really jumped at me was that they had a much lower exit rate, meaning anybody who was looking at a staff picks post was 45% more likely to keep interacting with the Lawrence Public Library website, whether it was to check out the book that was being discussed or to look at another book review, whatever it was, they wanted more of the website if they looked at a staff picks site. And I looked at a narrower category also, reading the classics, which is Dan Winsky's series. It had over 1,000 views over the past year. And it too had a lower exit rate. So people were more likely to keep doing things on the site, keep interacting with your online presence if they were looking at a Reading the Classics post. I also looked at the interaction with some other infographic posts that maybe didn't get the number of page views or Facebook likes. I looked at the series Like Try Why, and as a whole, that infographic series didn't have a whole lot of page views, but the people who did view it were, again, 36% more likely to keep interacting with the site. To check out a book that's being discussed, or for whatever reason, they want more after they look at Like Try Why. All of this, as I said, quantitative data, take it with a grain of salt. There's, on the whole, there's a lot of interaction with your site. I didn't really see anything that jumped out and was glaringly unpopular or unsuccessful. Almost everything that I looked at had something going for it. There was either a lot of interaction with the page, or there were good comments on the page, even if there weren't a lot of comments. So the stuff that you have seems to be working fairly well. So to go on from there, as far as suggestions I would have, I'm going to jump into just showing some content ideas from other libraries. These are going to be different things, so not infographics, not essay style reviews, different kinds of content that other libraries are using that you might consider. Maybe you've considered before and decided against it, but I'm going to show you a few examples that I found interesting. Of course, podcasting, a lot of larger libraries do podcasting, but there's some smaller ones that do it also. The Los Angeles Public Library has a big podcast, and theirs is available on iTunes. Some libraries have them available on the website. So this is the Denver Public Library, and they have a sort of smaller scale kind of thing. They do, this is a teen podcast, or the first two up here. So they record librarian content and book reviews that librarians are given, that kind of content, and they have it available for download on their website. Here's an example from the Seattle Public Library's podcasting page, and they record almost any of their larger library events, so speaker series, those kinds of things. They record and they make them available for download on the website, and also available in iTunes. And so they're performances and things that are already happening. They're just recording it, and then they add a sort of introduction, a standard introduction to the beginning of each one, which sort of allows them to advertise the library and things that are going on, and direct people to how they might learn more, direct people to the website. You can kind of hear what that sounds like here.
Welcome to the Seattle Public Library's podcasts of author readings and library events, a series of readings, performances, lectures, and discussions. Library podcasts are brought to you by the Seattle Public Library and Foundation. To learn more about our programs and podcasts, visit our website at www.spl.org. To learn how you can help the Library Foundation support the Seattle Public Library, go to foundation.spl.org.
And then you're going to hear just a little snippet of this Isaac Marion talk, and see that they just recorded a live event they were already doing. They set up some audio equipment so that they could make it available online after the fact.
So I hope that you'll all pick up Isaac Marion's book, Warm Bodies. There are quite a number of differences between the book and the film, although
so they get to advertise the library, show off the library and the events that are happening, and they have it available in iTunes, which is convenient, but even if you download it in iTunes, you hear the intro and you know where to go to find more information on the library and its services. Here's another type of content. This is from the Johnson County Public Library. This is their kids page, and they have sort of a bit of an interactive reader's advisory format when you first get in there. So they have books we like, movies to watch, music to hear, and all of those are randomly pulled by the website with the jacket and a link to the catalog from a list that the staff makes. And so it's really easily browsable, and again, it's kind of a visual sort of interface. So that's another example of a sort of a different take on Reader's Advisory through the web. Here's another example of embedding some map content. This is from a library in Wisconsin, which had a set of books, a collection of books, and photographs that were used in the books, and they slapped them all onto a Google map and embedded that on their website, and it became a sort of virtual tour, if you will. They were all locally taken photographs, and so people could click on a pin and it would show where the pin was taken, and then show the photograph and give a caption for the photograph. And so that's another interesting way to sort of include some interactivity. All of those things, you know, when you move away from just content that's made like in Publisher or just text content, it requires a lot of different things. It requires a lot of man hours and coordination. If you're recording performances, you have to have permissions, and so there's a number of growing pains if you were to move into some new types of content. But as far as technological growing pains, the last thing I'm going to leave you with is some plugin recommendations that make some more dynamic content a little bit easier to include. These are from an ALA publishing book by Jones and Farrington on libraries that use WordPress. They recommend OpenBook Book Data, which is a plugin that will retrieve book cover images and link to the catalog. Obviously, that's something you can do manually. The goal here would just be to make it easier. Poll Daddy is one that adds polls and ratings to a post or page. So, for instance, if you're giving a book review, you can also embed a post and patrons can rate the book themselves, and it becomes a little bit more interactive that way. WordPress Simple Viewer is a plugin that creates slideshows from WordPress or Flickr. So again, that embedded right in the post makes it a little bit more interactive and a little bit more visual if you wanted to go in that direction. And then Blurberry PowerPress has a podcasting plugin that helps you create and embed podcasts, and it's compatible with iTunes. So those are some ways, things you might look into if you were wanting to include different kinds of content, new kinds of content in the site. So hopefully these things have been interesting and might be helpful as you consider, you know, the kinds of content that you want to include on the website in the future.